My name is Emily Wilson. I am 71 years old. Sitting on the same weathered porch swing where Jacob and I once rocked our newborn Madison to sleep under a sky full of Alabama stars. The yard is loud again, 9 grandchildren shrieking with joy as they chase bubbles through the late summer dusk, their bare feet slapping warm grass that smells like childhood. 5 years ago, I thought every light in my life had gone out forever. This is the story of how the darkest night gave way to the brightest dawn, and how a secret worth $80 million, buried for nearly 6 decades, became the quiet miracle that brought my daughter home. I met Jacob Wilson in the summer of 1972. I was 23, fresh out of secretarial school, waitressing at Millie's Diner on Highway 31 to pay the rent on a studio apartment above the laundromat. He was 25, tall, quiet, with gentle hazel eyes that seemed to hold the weight of unspoken stories. He came in every Tuesday for the meatloaf special and always left a $5 tip on a $3 meal. One rainy October evening, he lingered until closing, helped me stack chairs, and asked if he could walk me home through the downpour. I said yes before I even knew his last name. We married 8 months later in the little white church on Maple Street. The reception was potluck in the fellowship hall, 23 guests, 1 sheet cake iced with store-bought frosting, and a borrowed navy suit for Jacob that was half a size too small. We honeymooned in a borrowed cabin on Lake Martin, fishing for crappie at dawn, making love in the narrow iron bed, and dreaming out loud about the life we would build. We had nothing but each other and a 1-bedroom apartment with peeling floral wallpaper and a leaky kitchen faucet. Jacob worked 12-hour shifts at the textile mill. I cleaned houses for lawyers, wives, and doctors' mothers. We ate pinto beans and cornbread, so often we joked we'd sprout roots. But every sacrifice felt sacred because we were building a life on love alone, and love, we discovered, was more than enough. We wanted children immediately. 5 long years of trying, 5 years of negative tests, temperature charts taped inside the bathroom cabinet, and prayers whispered in the dark while the mill whistle blew at 3 a.m., I'd lie awake listening to Jacob breathe. Terrified I was failing him as a wife, he'd pull me close and murmur into my hair, "Emily, you are my family. If God gives us 10 kids, I'll be grateful. If he gives us 0, I'll still be the luckiest man alive, because I have you." His words were balm, but the ache stayed, a quiet bruise over my heart. Then, one Tuesday in March 1978, 2 pink lines on a drugstore test. I sat on the cracked linoleum bathroom floor and cried so hard I nearly fainted. When Jacob came home, grease still under his fingernails, I just held up the stick. He dropped to his knees, pressed his face into my stomach, and sobbed like a child. 9 months later, on a snowy December morning, Madison Grace Wilson arrived, 7 pounds, 2 ounces, Jacob's eyes, my stubborn chin. The nurse placed her in my arms, and the world righted itself on its axis. I made a silent vow: this child would never want for love, never doubt she was the center of our universe. Madison grew like springtime after a long winter. She learned to read at 4, curling up in Jacob's lap with picture books long after her bedtime. She played flute in the school band, her fingers dancing over silver keys, while Jacob beamed from the back row of every concert. She volunteered at the senior center every Saturday, painting the fingernails of ladies who reminded me of my own grandmother. She still ran to the door, screaming, "Daddy." When Jacob came home, smelling of machine oil and honest sweat, we scrimped for her braces, her AP classes, her summer camp for gifted kids. We never had extra, but we had enough. Our little house on Sycamore Lane overflowed with laughter, music, and the smell of Sunday pot roast and cornbread. Neighbors said you could hear us singing hymns on the porch 3 houses down. They were right. Madison graduated valedictorian in May 2016, took a gap year to find herself, whatever that meant to an 18-year-old who'd never left the county. Got a job at Brood Awakening, the hip coffee shop downtown with the mismatched chairs and the chalkboard menu. That's where she met Tyler Davis. It started with small, almost imperceptible changes. She stopped coming home for Sunday dinner. Texts slowed to a trickle. When I asked about her new boyfriend, she changed the subject with a tightness around her mouth I'd never seen before. Then one Tuesday, in October 2018, she called and said, "I'm moving in with Tyler. I love him. Please don't be mad. No address. No invitation to meet him. No explanation." My stomach dropped like a stone in deep water. But I told myself she was 20, in love, entitled to her choices. Jacob squeezed my hand under the table and whispered, "She come around. She's just spreading her wings." I wanted to believe him. The distance widened into a chasm that swallowed birthdays, holidays, and every fragile hope we clung to. Birthday gifts came back unopened with return to sender scrawled in unfamiliar handwriting. Christmas, 2019. I cooked her favorite sturkey with cornbread dressing, cranberry relish, pecan pies, at a place at the table with her childhood Christmas plate. She called for 4 minutes, wished us Merry Christmas in a voice that belonged to a stranger, and hung up. Jacob and I stared at the empty chair and cried into our cold plates until the candles burned down to nubs. A church friend mentioned seeing Madison at the obstetrician. Looking pale and thin, pregnant. Twins. I called immediately, heart hammering. "Baby, why didn't you tell us?" Silence so thick, I could feel it through the phone. Then, "We're fine, Mama. Tyler has everything under control." Click. We raced to St. Mary's when a neighbor spotted her in labor. Security stopped us at the maternity ward desk. "You're not on the approved visitor list." A week later, a mutual friend showed us Facebook photos, Madison cradling to perfect infants, her smile brittle as spun glass. Our grandchildren, strangers. I zoomed in until my eyes burned, memorizing every eyelash, every fold of their tiny ears. 3 more grandchildren followed over for brutal years. We never held them. Never received birth announcements. The baby clothes I mailed came back shredded in the box. Madison's rare texts were cold, robotic. "We don't need anything." Jacob, aged 10 years into dark circles carved permanent shadows under his eyes. He lost 20 pounds he couldn't afford to lose. One night, he whispered, "This isn't our Madison M. Something's poisoning her soul." A mother knows when her child is drowning, even from afar. I felt it in my bones. We tried everything. Certified letters that came back unopened. Drive-bys past an address we weren't supposed to have. Voicemails that went unheard. Jacob suggested we foster the Johnson siblings, 3 orphans left parentless after a drunk driver on Highway 29, Abigail 19, Matthew 13, Haley 9. We brought them home in June 2021. Suddenly, the house had noise again. Haley running to Jacob screaming, "Daddy." The way Madison once did. Abigail calling us Mum and Dad without hesitation. Matthew's quiet smile when Jacob praised his charcoal sketches of the old oak in the backyard. The pain of Madison's absence didn't vanish, but had learned to share space with new love. We were healing, slowly, in the way broken bones knit together under a cast. 2 years later, on a humid July afternoon in 2023, Jacob collapsed at the mill. Massive heart attack. I held his hand as the machines screamed and then went silent. 32 years of marriage gone in 6 hours. I called Madison through choking sobs. "Your daddy's gone, baby. Please come home." "I'm sorry for your loss," she said, voice flat as winter pavement. "I'll try to make the funeral." She arrived 20 minutes late, clinging to Tyler's arm like ivy strangling a crumbling wall. Sat in the back row. Walked past her father's open casket without a tear. Left without speaking to me. I buried my face in Abigail's shoulder and shattered into 1,000 pieces that no glue on earth could reassemble. A week later, Jacob's lawyer, Mr. Harold Miller, asked me to come to his office on Magnolia Avenue. Jacob left instructions to be opened only after his death. I sat numbly in the leather chair as he slid a thick manila envelope across the desk. "Emily, this will sound impossible, but please listen." He opened the envelope with trembling hands. Jacob's father, Thomas Wilson, was murdered in 1963 when Jacob was 11. Thomas had inherited $80 million from an oil lease in East Texas, money the family never touched because Thomas feared it would paint a target on their backs. A business rival named Victor Langston wanted the account numbers. Tortured Thomas for 3 days in the barn behind their house. Jacob hid in the hayloft and heard everything, every scream, every plea. Thomas died without giving up the codes. Before he passed, he whispered them to Jacob and made him swear never to tell a soul, not even a future wife, for the same men would come for him. Jacob was 11 years old. Emily, he carried that terror for 59 years. I couldn't breathe. $80 million while we ate beans and cornbread. While we worried about the electric bill and prayed the transmission held out 1 more month. Jacob prayed for 2 things every night. Mr. Miller continued gently. First, a wife who would love him poor, who would never know about the money until it was safe. Second, if God granted that wife, that Jacob would die first, so she could enjoy the money without him ever having to reveal the secret that had haunted him. Since childhood, God answered both prayers. The money has been compounding in a numbered Swiss account for 59 years. It's yours now, Emily. All 80 million. I sobbed until my ribs ached and my throat was raw. Jacob had chosen poverty to test love, and I had passed without knowing the test existed. He had died first, exactly as he begged God, so I could live well. He had loved me that fiercely, that completely. I reached for my phone to call Madison. My finger hovered over her name. That same gut instinct that had screamed for 4 years whispered louder than ever. If Tyler finds out, he will never let her go. He will drain every penny and destroy her to keep it. I set the phone down. Silence, I decided. For now, the secret would stay buried a little longer. 2 weeks later, still drowning in grief, I hired private investigator Brandon Smith, a former Marine with kind eyes and a voice like gravel. I also walked into the police station and asked for Detective Savannah Johnson, the officer who handled trafficking cases for the entire Southeast region. My daughter cut contact 4 years ago, I told her, voice shaking. Moved in with a man I've never met. Had 5 children, never told us. Won't let us near them. When my husband died, she showed no emotion. Something is wrong, please help. Brandon's first report came 3 days later. Madison never left the house alone. Tyler's hand always on her elbow, guiding, controlling. She flinched at loud noises, looked over her shoulder constantly, wore long sleeves in 90-degree heat. Brandon's handwritten note at the bottom, classic isolation and control. Possible coercive control, or worse. Detective Johnson called 3 weeks later. Mrs. Wilson, Tyler Davis, is part of a 10-man human trafficking ring operating across Alabama, Georgia, and Tennessee. They target independent young women, love bomb them, isolate them, force pregnancies, use threats against family to enforce compliance. 15 known victims. We've been building a case for 2 years. Your information gives us probable cause for warrants. We're moving in. 5 days of agony. I barely slept. Prayed on my knees until the carpet left marks. Cleaned the house obsessively. Baked banana bread no one ate. Then Tuesday, 6:32 p.m., my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. We have her, all 15 women, all 28 children, safe. I sped to the hospital, ignoring every speed limit, praying out loud the entire way. Madison sat on the edge of a bed in the ER, small and pale bruises circling her wrists like purple bracelets. Our eyes met across the sterile room. She whispered, "Mama," and crumpled. I caught her before she hit the floor and held her while she sobbed out for years of hell. It had started with Logan Millersweet, Steady Logan, who'd been Madison's high school sweetheart since sophomore year. They were engaged, ring picked out, venues booked, save the dates designed. One afternoon at the supermarket, Madison accidentally bumped Tyler's cart, apologized. He smiled too wide, asked her name, wouldn't let her pass. Logan stepped in front of her protectively. Madison told Tyler to back off. That moment of strength marked her. They stalked her for weeks. Learned her schedule. Knew when she closed the coffee shop alone. Grabbed her in the alley, behind Brood Awakening. Dragged her into a panel van. Showed her photos. Me, at the Piggly Wiggly. Jacob leaving the mill, Logan walking to his car. Cooperate, or they die first. Starting with the boyfriend, forced her to call Logan, break up, say she'd met someone new and was moving in with him. Forced her to call me, announce she was moving in with Tyler. Every word scripted. Every call on speaker with a gun to her head. Tyler raped her repeatedly, determined to get her pregnant fast. Children, he believed, were the ultimate leash, biological chains no woman would break. But Logan never stopped looking. He quit his job, moved into the house directly behind Tyler's rental, discovered a blind spot in the security cameras at the back fence where the motion sensor had burned out, smuggled contraceptive implants in waterproof bags hidden under garden stones, left coded notes in the hollow of an old oak tree. During Tyler's business trips with the ring-moving women across state lines, Madison slipped out to the back plot when the guards were distracted. They had minutes, sometimes an hour, of real love, whispered plans, stolen kisses that tasted like freedom. Every single child was Logan's. DNA later proved it beyond doubt. Tyler never suspected because Madison played her role perfectly, protecting the man she loved and the grandparents her babies deserved. For years of secret defiance. 4 years of Madison protecting us by pushing us away. For years of carrying hope in her belly while living in hell. At trial, Tyler screamed from the defendant's table, veins bulging in his neck. "Those are my kids. You'll never escape me." Madison stood, looked him dead in the eye, and said, "They were never yours. They were conceived in love, not violence. You stole my body, but you never touched my heart." The courtroom was silent enough to hear a pin drop. All 10 men received life without parole. The judge called it the most egregious case of modern slavery she'd ever seen. Logan proposed again in our living room. 3 months later, with the same ring he'd kept in his pocket for 4 years, polished weekly like a talisman. Madison said yes through happy tears that soaked both their shirts. Their backyard wedding was small, perfect. The 5 children ring-bearers and flower girl beamed in tiny tuxes and lavender dresses. Abigail read a poem she'd written. Matthew played flute. Haley scattered petals with fierce concentration. I felt Jacob smiling down from heaven, his hand on my shoulder. A month after the wedding, "Mama, I'm pregnant, triplets." This time I was there for every moment. Midnight cravings for pickles and ice cream. Painting the nursery, the soft yellow Madison loved as a child, feeling 6 tiny feet kick under my palms. Holding her hand through 22 hours of labor while Logan counted contractions and cried every time she squeezed his hand. 3 perfect babies born free, screaming their arrival into a world that finally felt safe. I divided the $80 million carefully, with lawyers and accountants who specialized in generational wealth. Trust funds for Madison, Logan, Abigail, Matthew, Haley, and all 9 grandchildren locked until age 25, then released in stages with financial literacy requirements. $10 million built Jacob's house, a 30-bedroom safe haven on 20 acres outside town with wraparound porches and rocking chairs that never stopped moving. Therapy rooms painted sky blue, art studio with north-facing windows, library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, organic garden where kids learn to grow tomatoes taller than they are, playground big enough for 50 children to run wild. We opened our doors in June 2024. 147 children have called it home so far. Every bedroom has a quilt sewn by the church ladies and a nightlight. Shaped like a star, Madison earned her master's in social work in record time and now runs the counseling program at Jacob's house. Logan coaches Little League and still kisses her like they're 20 and sneaking behind the bleachers. Abigail had a daughter named Emily Grace who has her great-grandmother's eyes. Matthew won a full scholarship to Rhode Island School of Design and sends me sketches of the old oak tree every month. Haley starts law school next fall, determined to lock up monsters for good. The Johnson kids call me Mama M and Jacob Papa Jake even though they never met him. They say his picture smiles at them from the mantle. 5 years later, porch swing, sunset painting, the sky, peach and gold and lavender. 9 grandchildren chase fireflies while the triplets nap inside under the same baby quilt Madison used. Madison leans her head on my shoulder, her hair smelling like the coconut shampoo she loved at 15. What would you have done, Mama, if you'd given up after Daddy's funeral? I'd have lost you forever, baby. And I'd have lost myself. You never gave up. Not once. A mother knows when her child is still fighting. And a wife knows when her husband trusted her to keep fighting after he was gone. She smiles, tears shining like diamonds in the fading light. Daddy knew you'd keep fighting too. He told me once, when I was little, that you were the strongest person he'd ever met. I didn't understand then. I do now. I look up at the first star, appearing, and whisper, he loved us enough to die poor, so we could live rich. And he loved us enough to trust we'd find each other again. To every parent reading this, if your child suddenly cuts you off, if the change feels wrong in your bones, trust your gut. They might not be choosing distance. They might be protecting you with every ounce of strength they have left. They might be trapped. Praying someone notices the SOS, they're blinking in Morse code with every forced smile. I almost gave up the day we buried Jacob. I stood at his grave and begged God to let me follow him. But something, maybe Jacob's quiet voice, maybe Madison's heartbeat echoing across the miles, whispered, keep going. I'm forever glad I listened. Love won. We won. Never give up on your children. Never.